¿Qué color tengo? Dicen que acaban de azul y ministerio. No, no entiendo. A mí me dijeron, como no éramos niños, éramos pareja. No, mira.
sí, 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 sí. Sí, sí, sí. Aló, aló.
Tómate una más. Es lo que usted dice. Bueno,
Oh, sí, sí, 1, 3, 1, 3, sí.
sí, se la sí, es que para los sí, bueno, sabes que me queda un poco, así que si lo logras. Lo logro, no te queda nada, si no me queda nada. Y aquí en Chile, que este país de
Buenos días.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated.
Buenos días, por favor, tomen asiento, señoras y señores.
Uno, tres, 1, 3, sí, sí, sí. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. Tomás, Tomás, Tomás. ¿Ves? Me está llegando señal a la interpretación. Sí, 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 sí. Ah, no, sí, a los micrófonos sí le llega. Voy a ver los selectores. Algo pasa con el selector. Ah, ya. No, ya sé lo que es. Digo yo.
Good morning. Good morning. Buenos días.
Alejandro.
Buen día. Please take your seats.
No están activadas
Thank
las
you.
antenas.
Buenos días, good morning.
Good morning.
Buenos días, por favor, tomen sus asientos. Bom dia, por favor, agradecemos se podem sentar-se. Obrigado. Good morning. Buenos dias, bom dia, bonjour. Muitíssimas graças.
Thank you very much for having accepted this invitation. I have lost my voice somewhat, but we'll do the best we can just to make sure that the interpretation is working correctly. Those of you who wish to listen in English and other languages that will be enabled, please connect your headphones.
Thank you for joining us. If you need interpretation service, it's available. You can check in your channels. Bom dia, muito obrigado pela presença. Senhores e senhores podem comprovar a interpretação no dispositivo. Buenos dias, outra vez.
Good morning once again. It's an honor to be here. My name is Santiago Mendez. I am the head of education of the multi-sectorial office of UNESCO in Santiago. Before we begin, I would like to explain a little bit the order of the day during this morning. We are opening officially now, which is planned for 1 hour, and we will finish it. And at the end, we will invite you to an official photograph that will be taken right here where the flags are at the end of the hall. Then we'll go to a coffee break. So having said this, I would like to kick off this extraordinary meeting of ministers of education gathered by UNESCO and the Ministry of Education of Chile. Our organizations that support us and the core organizations, which is the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, ACAF, the World Bank, ECLAC, our agency of the United Nations, which is hosting us today so kindly, and our sister agency, UNICEF. And also we have received the support of several entities such as the Institute or International Institute for Planning and Education, IPE. We have received the major support from IDB and Mowawe, and which we thank very much to all of you that are here with us this morning. This event, with no doubt, takes special relevance when at this point right now, we will have an impact over so many millions of people. We look at our countries combined, we're talking about 125 million inhabitants, students, youngsters, and 6.9 million of teachers also. And it will allow also this agenda so that you, ministers and authorities, will allow us to define public policies within an orientation framework for the execution of these public policies, which will help us to make progress going in the same reintegration of 12 million youngsters, boys and girls that are right now outside the educational system at this point. So beyond being a technical political gathering, it also reacts to ethical imperatives, social awareness that are common and that we can mobilize, how we can say to mobilize actions to be able to be witnessed every day that there are so many students of ours that are lagging. And we've seen the major impact of the pandemic in our region. In this sense, the meeting will show the joint work that we are carrying out right now in this continent. So the progress with regards to education and the fulfillment of the objectives, sustainable development number 4, which is our major mandate. So I would like to begin now with the opening, thanking you for being here And I would like to invite Mr. Alberto Van Claveren, who is our Minister of Foreign Affairs of Chile, in order to kick off with his welcoming words to our country right here to my right. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Thank you very much. Please, all of you, good morning. Mr. Minister of Education, Mr. Nicolas Cataldo, the coordinator resident of the system of the United Nations, Maria Jose Torres, Mr. Secretary, Executive Secretary of ECLAC, Jose Manuel Salazar, Mrs. Director, Regional Joint for UNICEF for Latin America and the Caribbean, Angela Dufay, and Mrs. Director of the Regional Office of UNESCO, Claudio Uribe, Mrs. Deputy Director General of UNESCO of Education, Giannini, Manager of Social Development of the CAF, Pablo Bartol, Mr. Director of Human Development for Latin America of the World Bank, Mr. Jaime Saavedra. Delegates who are with us, friends, all of you, I would like to give every one of you the warmest welcome to this meeting, extraordinary meeting of ministers of education of Latin America and the Caribbean, which will be aimed towards making progress to a regional framework of reference for the reactivation and recovery and transformation of education. This is a gathering that responds to the willingness of our countries to tackle in a joint manner a problem that is affecting us in a cross-sectional manner, to guarantee a quality education to the millions of boys and girls and youngsters in our region. This is a commitment that Chile and the government of President Gabriel Boric have taken up with the greatest seriousness. A proof of this is the recent announcement that our co-president will be presiding along with the UNESCO Secretary General Audrey Azoulay, the Director's High-Level Committee for the Sustainable Development for ODS4 of the United Nations. The General Secretary of the United Nations has saying that at midterm of the Agenda 2030, we are leaving more than half of the world behind us, close unquote. The persistent inequalities in economic insecurity and the growing impacts of climate change, the conflicts that are increasing, and a digital gap that is expanding are the obstacles that are really menacing our objectives of being able to have prosperity for all of us. As you know, education is a determining factor for the reduction of poverty, inequalities, and in order to be able to reach gender equality. All these elements are tremendously relevant for Latin America and the Caribbean, which have made up a constant concern for our governments. The pandemic deepened the gaps that already existed with regards to the access to education in our countries, something that today evermore is something urgent to be able to fix. I would like to underline right now the multilateral efforts carried out in our region that have been articulated in order to confront this challenge, and which are right now crystallized in the commitments for the recovery and transformation of education of the Buenos Aires Declaration of 2022. During this week, the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations, ECOSOC, which is presided by Chile this year, gathered here during an extraordinary meeting in the same place in order to debate the future of the work with relevance, the sustainable development, or number 8 in the world stage. Today, we are gathering to have a regional dialogue on the reactivation of education. In this context, we are very proud that Chile might be able to be a place of gathering in order to find solutions to common challenges, both in the global dimension as well as, in this case, regional. I am certain that the political and technical debate that will take place during these days will allow us to make progress as a region in matters of the reactivation and transformation of education. This is not simply a challenge that we need to fulfill within the ODS, but it's an obligation of all our countries in order to improve the life of future generations in Latin America and the Caribbean. Let's not leave any boy or girl or child or youngster behind. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias, señor ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Chile. Especialmente essa bienvenida. Damos paso ahora al señor José Manuel Salazar Sirinax, que es el secretario ejecutivo de la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe, la CEPAL, que nos acoge hoy en este espacio, en esta.
ECLAC has given us support in that significant area of our region. Please, Mr. Secretary.
Muy buenos días a todos.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Dear Mr. Nicolás Cataldo, Minister of Education of Chile, dear Estefania Giannini, General Subdirector of Education of UNESCO, dear Claudia Uribe, Director of the Regional Multisectorial Office of UNESCO here in Santiago, dear Anne-Claire Dufay, Regional Deputy Director of UNICEF, Mr. Pablo Bartol, Manager of Social Development of the CAF, the Latin American Development Bank, Jaime Saavedra, Director of Human Development for Latin America of the World Bank, dear Resident Coordinator of the UN in Chile, Maria Jose Torres, dear Felipe Gómez Gallo, of the Student Platform for the Development of Education, Educational Authorities of Latin America and the Caribbean, representatives of the UN system of academia and civil society. Dear friends all, may you all have a very good morning. May you all be very welcome to this extraordinary meeting of Ministers of Education of Latin America and the Caribbean, and welcome to ECLAC. I truly thank the Ministry of Education of Chile and UNESCO for inviting to this meeting and inviting us to co-organize it here in ECLAC that belongs to you all. Now, to move on from commitment to action and to benefit from the tremendous social mobilization that was generated during the summit for the transformation of education summoned by the UN in September 2022, the regional coordination mechanism of SDG 4 stated in its work plan between 2022 and 2025 this meeting in Santiago as a milestone for political and technical dialogue in order to make headway in the implementation of public policies to reactivate and transform education. Education is indeed fundamental in order to tackle with the triple trap of development faced by Latin America and the Caribbean, characterized by tremendous inequality, by dynamic insufficiency, or the inability to grow at greater and sustained rates, and low institutional capabilities. Every successful sustainable development strategy, as well as aimed at growth and employment, requires decisive investment in education. Education is not only crucial to generate jobs and income, to lower inequality and poverty and the construction of society, greater mobility and social cohesion, but it is also fundamental in order to increase the levels of productivity and innovation of various countries in the region. Despite the fact that the region has registered important progress in terms of access and over the past few decades, there are still important challenges related to inclusion and quality that contribute towards the reproduction of social inequalities in our region and are indeed obstacles in order to move towards more productive structural changes and more inclusive social development that are the fundamental foundations for sustainable development. The tremendous environmental aspects require adequate human resources. In other words, to advance towards more productive, inclusive, and sustainable development, education is a cross-cutting and fundamental condition. The impacts of the pandemic deepened these challenges. A few weeks ago, we launched here in ECLAC the regional results of the measurements of 2022 of the PISA tests conducted by the OECD that confirmed our worst fears related to the general problems faced by learning for a whole generation of school children, not only in the region, but in the world as a whole. But as mentioned in the annual report of ECLAC, Social Outlook for Latin America and the Caribbean 2022, the experience of the interruption of face-to-face classes and the silent crisis resulting over the past few years opens up an opportunity to transform the educational systems in the region. During the pandemic, educational systems implemented important innovations, and we can certainly learn from them and obtain lessons from them. And dealing with this necessary transformation of education, which is vital for development, requires financing that is sustainable, that enables the design and the implementation of long-term measures and also actions to improve productivity and the efficacy of educational systems. In order to nourish the discussions that we will be holding over the next 2 days, we have shared 3 documents with you specifically produced for this meeting. In order to contribute to the financing session, ECLAC and the World Bank, with the support of UNESCO, developed a document entitled The Challenges of Financial Sustainability for Education in Latin America and the Caribbean, that poses the need to ensure the financial sustainability of educational policies that are aligned with the development strategy of each country. In order to contribute towards a recovery session, ECLAC, together with UNESCO, produced a document, the reduction of school dropout situation in Latin America and the Caribbean, that studies the impact of the pandemic upon school dropout rates and analyzes the main measures taken by countries in order to prevent and reduce this situation among students in the region. And finally, with the main purpose of offering inputs for agreements aimed at safeguarding the compliance of SDG by 2030, UNESCO produced a report on the monitoring of SDG 4 for between 2019 and 2023, entitled The Urgency of Educational Recovery in Latin America and the Caribbean. And as from ECLAC, we have contributed with our technical and statistical contribution. The invitation for today and tomorrow is to enter into a dialogue and exchange experiences and actions in order to design, implement, and finance actions aimed at the recovery and educational transformation that our country so dearly require. Few issues are as relevant and strategic than this one, and we certainly wish you a very fruitful meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Executive Secretary. We now offer the floor to Stefania Giannini, who is our General Subdirector of Education of UNESCO, who will be connected online as from the head office of UNESCO in Paris. I don't know if we have the connection ready. Good morning.
Good morning, Stefania.
Minister of Foreign Affairs of Chile, Minister of Education, dear partners, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor, a true honor, to be with you today, albeit at an online level. First of all, I would like to truly thank the Minister of Education of Chile, Mr. Nicolás Cataldo, for his kind invitation to this very important event for UNESCO, for the region, and for all those present. I would like to greet all the ministers and authorities and representatives of collaborating agencies. This meeting conveys a very strong message and a very important message related to its commitment to education as an engine for inclusion and growth, and of course for sustainable development.
To share with you the vision globally from the UNESCO perspective, and then a little bit zooming into the LAC region in terms of challenges and opportunities. Through its important coordinating role, leadership function, UNESCO has been somehow leading on discussions around the futures of education. You remember for sure just pioneering a big disruptive change which happened to the world in 2020, a few months before our Director General, Audrey Azoulay, launched an important initiative on the future of education, which was a kind of a second step after the more memorable report driven by an international committee 26 years before and chaired by Monsieur Delors. This time, a leader from the Global South, President Saleh Work of Ethiopia, accepted kindly and graciously to lead this team, and the report released 2 years later actually became and still is the framework where, with many colleagues and friends in the room, I could see a little bit before the meeting started, and the big wishes and greetings to all of you. We started this process which led to the Transforming Education Summit. It was a very special time, let's say, challenging time for all countries of the world. On one side, the interruption of schooling during COVID was particularly devastating, and particularly devastating in your region, in Latin America and the Caribbean region. Schools were closed for nearly a year, as you all know, and a half, with a dramatic impact that, unfortunately, we know will last for several years. And this was the situation of all countries in the world, of course, with different balance and approach. Well, this moment push all of us to think of education via, let's say, a dual lens. We repeated many times this approach, and it was very useful to set the scene and find solutions. On one side, the urgent recovery actions, very much needed, that we are still undertaking, and the reimagining of education and its future. So the world on fire, the house on fire, we have to take measures, but we have to go beyond this tragic moment. And therefore, the Transforming Education Summit, organized under the coordination of UNESCO and all the other partners, UNICEF, and many UN agencies, coming with us under the leadership of the Secretary General Guterres, who called all the leaders of the world to commit to transform education. And together with all partners, we started to see how we could capitalize on these commitments, 100 and some 67 countries which ran national consultations to identify their own priorities, including in the LAC region. And in this context, the role of the governing body of SDG4 just renewed and upgraded the different level and power at ministerial and head of state level. The SDG4 high-level steering committee was tasked with the follow-up of the summit. And now its role, its function to make this transformation accountable, to monitor the process of transforming education at country level. And we started to create important tools. I wish to mention the online dashboard that now is available and can allow us to monitor country actions against commitments taken at the summit. Well, from a first analysis of transformative actions at country level, which will be made public in a few months, some interesting priority themes emerge in the LAC region. Let me mention a few of them. For sure, still COVID-19 recovery measures. For sure, digital transformation. Whatever we think about AI and AI, especially generative AI, we are very much all focusing on this topic. We know that digital learning is part of the future of education, and so we have to cope with a new stage in education and transform education systems accordingly. And of course, curricula content being some of the most important tool to change the world. Either it's about climate change education or global citizenship education, so important and timely now to address the many geopolitical tensions and, threat to democratic societies. Well, we must capitalize, we wish to capitalize on this momentum created by the Transforming Education Summit. And let me take the opportunity really to thank warmly all, ministers who were part of the first cycle of the high-level steering committee and being our champions in pushing the agenda, and now the new members of the high-level steering committee who have the burden and the amazing mission to make this process going ahead from now to the Summit of the Future in a few months, and from the Summit of the Future in 2025 to the Social Summit. Well, this year is particularly important for the region and for the world in education in terms of political leadership for you, with Chile co-chairing, replacing Sierra Leone, the high-level steering committee, and with a double thank once again to President Boric for his own engagement and commitment as a young leader and a former young leader of students, university students, and I'm sure he understands fully and feels so much engaged in this mission. And of course, my dear co-chair at Sherpa Group level, Minister Nicolas Cataldo, who already took the driving seat in the process. Well, another important moment this year, still in the region, not by chance, I suppose, is the G20, which will be held, as you know, the summit and also the G20 meeting in Brazil. And it's very important and very a great pleasure for me to share with you that the Brazilian presidency kindly and generously accepted and offered better to host the global education meeting, which takes place with all ministers of the world every 2, 3, 4 years. And this year will take place in Brazil back to the G20 ministerial meeting. So this is a really important time for all of us, and the region is very much in a position to build on some achievements. I can mention some of them. The regional coordination mechanism for SDG4, established in 2018 and composed of 11 members and 9 regional organizations, is an excellent example of regional level technical and political dialogue about education issues. Allow me also cite an important point on financing of education. The average annual public spending on education in the region, in the LAC region, is above the worldwide average and above several other regions of the world, with a kind of 3.9 of GDP on average. However, over 30% of the countries of the region still fail to meet the 40 of the GDP target for education spending, and this is another important number, another important parameter to evaluate and to improve, actually, the quality of education. And 15 countries in the region have reduced their public spending since 2015, and which makes exchange of good practices at regional level even more important. Well, all of these to say that we see this ministerial conference meeting as a unique opportunity, really, to connect the regional with the global perspective on SDG4. And I do believe it's also a very good chance to shaping member states' vision around the transition from what we call, together with many friends there, the recovery phase, and to move to resilience and beyond, let's say, to reimagination. And this is about commitment to be translated into concrete actions. Estimados ministros y estimados amigos, les deseo una experiencia productiva.
Dear friends, we hope that this is a productive experience during the roundtables, ministerial roundtables that will be taking place in parallel events, the presentations of the different learning areas and all those that have been programmed, separated for these 2 days. We truly hope for your final declaration and your constant dedication to the progress made by the SDGs 4. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you.
Grazie, grazie mille, Stefania. Thank you. Madam Janine, thank you very much. Just remind all participants you have interpretation. So, lembrando a todos os participantes, vocês têm interpretação e podemos seguir também por los audífonos.
You can also continue with the headphones. Thank you very much to Mrs. Benini. We will now go on to Minister of Education of Chile, Mr. Nicolás Cataldo, who very kindly will be with us here in the leadership of this very important meeting. Mr. Minister, please. Thank you very much to all of you. Welcome. I would like to thank you for being here on behalf of our government and our president, Gabriel Boric Font. I would not repeat all the people. There are very many of them, by the way, but we give you the warmest welcome to all of you. It is my pleasure, obviously, to be here in the extraordinary meeting of Ministers of Education of Latin America and the Caribbean, this Ministerial in Santiago 2024. To be precise, clearly, it also sought to include, aside from the Ministers of Education of State, to our also our colleagues, Ministers of Finance. If they are here, obviously, we also say hello to them. We greet them and thank you for being here. This educational meeting of Treasury and Finance is the importance of what gathers us today, the importance of the quickness we need to reach out, and the motto that we're gathering here with this meeting. Here we are at the Ministerial 2024 to go from commitment to action. We have very many reasons to be optimistic and proud. This is a major source of inspiration because in a historical step that we cannot skip, we see here in the building of ECLAC. And not only this, but also in a room that invites us to pronounce the name of economist Raúl Previc, who really does not need any presentation in the face of this audience. As Latin Americans, Caribbeans, we all know the importance of ECLAC in our economies, its contribution in the intellectual and political formation of economists and professionals that are decisive, as particularly for its major contribution to the task of thinking and acting in a region that's fractured by colonialism, by the borders that really show racism and inequalities. Also, where all these areas are expressed in the same time, simultaneously, the history of our region shares intimate with ECLAC through Jose Manuel Salazar. I thank the commission that receives us today and allows us to think of education going over to from commitment to action in a space that is historically significant. During the preparations of this meeting, thinking about the challenges that we have before us in terms of financing, reactivation, and recovery, and transformation of education, I was thinking about days of the major efforts made by our countries during the centuries 19 and 20, and particularly those who were before us in our charges to establish existing educational systems where everything was to be done. We're thinking about the titanic task of adding resources to build schools in areas that are so rural, and the urgency of training teachers that had to populate those rooms, and that revolutionary mission of being able to have boys and girls going to an public educational school, probably separating them from the tasks that they were part of in the family economies. Think about publicists, intellectuals that were turned on to convince the parents that the progress was really in schools and the importance that their children would be always going to school and doing their homework, and the hopes that are always giving life to all these places. We're thinking about the educational models that inspired us as around 100 or 150 years ago in the pedagogical commissions that have really shaped our educational system. The first answers to questions that we still have: what to teach, how to do it, and with which purpose. I was thinking about the debates, that the route the education should take and how to transform it in poverty. Now we're in a moment that requires creativity and also a system of education that will be strong. We're part of a long history, and we are politics, and we're concerned about education. Is that we still trust in the enrichment of human experience. We're thinking about continuing of this task. We believe that it is possible because we have more tools now, more experience, and really very strong conviction. Our mission is that our boys and girls and youngsters will go back to school to really reconnect with the schools, see in the rooms a transformational space. Pandemic took a lot from us. And so some of them took away some of their families and established a relationship that we need to care for. That line that really gathers families and each one of the members to an establishment of education. Today, unlike yesterday, we perhaps not need to see that boys and girls go to school, but rather to return and to stay there. We are also concerned about the learning processes because this is what school is all about, university, nurseries, all the educational areas of all the educational route is to learn, always learning in the best way possible and with a clear purpose. The indicators show the state that the learning process are stagnant, even we went back. And we believe that these backups are not only numbers, but conditions that determine lives and define up to how we can reach as human beings. Our challenge is to recover, of course, reactivate, and also this is the invitation we want to extend from Chile to the entire region to recover and reactivate. Because what we had yesterday was not enough. Today, we have the opportunity that this source of urgency will give us the ability to make a leap. We have better attendance indexes and retention, better learning process, and better educational experience. As the ones before us, we need to build schools, well, to improve the infrastructures among those staffs that still exist. We are lucky that we're not starting from scratch, but yet this challenge is very intense. We need more and better, well-equipped schools with all the necessary elements that education requires in the middle of the 21st century. To sustain our educational system, for this, we need to discuss formulas and efficient opportunities for financing. And this is why I thank the disposition of our ministers of finance that are with us. The topics of financing of education are an area of work that are of great precedence. This is a great major topic in this debate. I trust that during these days, we allow us to have better incentives to come flow in the same horizon, to make progress to the development and the well-being of our nations. From this is a major part of what it depends on, that in fact we may be able to go from commitment to action. I reiterate once again the happiness to be able to receive you all here in our country in the moment where Chile takes a position of leadership in terms of education. As I was just saying, Stefania Giannini, the co-chair that was be taken by Gabriel Font in the high-level committee for the fulfillment of objectives of sustainable development during the biennial 2024-2025. We assume this responsibility with being proud with and being aware of the task of establishing globally the voice of our region. To fulfill that purpose, we'd like to invite you to intensify our joint work to strengthen our different levels of our articulation and regional integration to become strong as a region in Latin America and the Caribbean, and also make decisive progress to the fulfillment of the SDGs. For our tasks are urgent and assorted. So it starts with the taking up of learning processes of boys and girls to make progress in their routes and enrich their information in a permanent and effective manner. At the same time, our knowledge must be tuned in with the concerns and the needs of our times, which means to open it up to innovations and pedagogical experience. Today, when those that are concerned not only development, but sustainable development, we need to strengthen education that will enable a life today without really risking it for the future. And it's essential that the learning process might happen north, the construct the Pacific area without conflict, the respect to human rights, the equality of gender to open up the salary and diversity as an indispensable aspect of the global citizenship. We have the possibility today to make a first step to make progress in the creation of a reference framework regional on public policies of reactivation recovery and transformation of education that will give us a mechanism to in fact go from commitment to action. And with this, accelerate the track towards implementation of the SDGs for going in deeper dialogue with the education as its essential condition. I thank once again the core organization UNESCO for the continued support of the countries in our region, the world, Latin America, CAF, the Inter-American, the IDB Bank, the World Bank, the ECLAC that is hosting us today, and UNICEF, of course, for the joint initiatives that are taking place with the ministries. I hope that this Ministerial Santiago 2024 will be in our memories for many reasons. For this scene, first of all, and for discussing on education along with the debates on finance, having kicked off a regional reference framework for the reactivation, recovery, and transformation of education, because it was here in Santiago where we will be go from commitment to action. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much. We thank the minister and now offer the floor to Pablo Bartol, Manager for Social Development of the Latin American Development Bank. Good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Minister Cataldo, for summoning so many people, ministers, authorities of ministries of education of Latin America and the Caribbean. And I just now, ministry, I was looking at the audience and thinking, this is a fantastic audience in order to transmit such fantastic ideas. Thank you very much for inviting us all. It brings together entities, banks, from the whole world. And I was thinking, what is it that we need to transform education? Well, we need to connect with each other. Individually, we will all be able to do little. We all have periods, administrations. We will be holding these posts for a few years, longer or shorter, but it's only a period of time. And therefore, what is important is for us to be connected. I need to be connected with Claudia from UNESCO and so on. And all of us have to be interconnected. And that is a fundamental aspect that we have ECLAC, as you said, UNESCO, and we also have our IE, Andres Vélez there. And of course, Jaime Saavedra from the World Bank, which is a world reference point when it comes to education. And thus, I would like to invite all participants to fully benefit from that, but not only because of their presentations. What is important in these events is that networking during free time, during the cocktail party, and tomorrow we have 2 days to get to know other people with whom to connect. We have Marcel Bateo from the IDB, a rising star in terms of education in Latin America. Benefit from that. We need to benefit from everyone that is present. That is what I wanted to say. What is most important is to benefit from the experience of others and to remain connected. Hopefully, in the next few years, you'll be able to travel to other countries that you found during this meeting that were very interesting and that might be useful for you. When it comes to network, it is always said that regardless of the visiting cards that you have shared, what is important is how many people have actually wanted to phone you. This is not only a formal and social event. These are discussions with contents to pose our problems, to mention our difficulties, and to know what was done in those areas, how you can help me. And those connections are important. We need to accumulate. That is what will change education in Latin America. We can all do little individually. So I hope that you may all discover many. Last week, I spent time with Minister Cataldo in Madrid with 26 ministers of education, both national and provincial, from Latin America. And at the end of the day, the ministers were asked who had inspired them most from a technical viewpoint and from in inspirational terms in terms of ideas and motivations and so on. And in the two categories, Minister Cataldo was the one that received the largest number of votes. So I hope that you may all discover many ministers Cataldo in this room during these 2 days. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We now offer the floor to Jaime Saavedra, who is the Regional Director for Human Development for Latin America and the Caribbean of the World Bank. Jaime, you have the floor. First of all, I think we will hire Pablo as the main spokesman and PR man for education in the world. I, first of all, would like to thank Minister Cataldo and Minister Alberto Van Claveren, and through them thank the government of Chile not only for summoning us, but to act as a leader in terms of face up to these challenges that are of such enormous magnitude. I would also like to thank the co-organizers, ECLAC, CAF, UNICEF, for organizing this extraordinary meeting together with the World Bank that enables us to discuss, exchange visiting cards, experiences, and also establish the links that we require in order to work jointly with this around this tremendous challenge that we all face. I believe that this is also an additional step in a far more intensive collaboration process between the different organizations, between the World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF, the IDB, and also CAF. They have had far more links over the past 4 years, and that, I believe, is a historical change in terms of the joint work at a global and regional level that must also be replicated in more coordinated work at a country level. This collaboration was also reflected on an invitation, high-level invitation for education recovery in 2022, where Chile played a key role in a regional event held in Bogota, where ministers and vice ministers undersigned a commitment for action as a result of this tremendous concern that we have in terms of recovering our learnings. And this meeting and other meetings evidence that we are making headway in this coordination, in this joint work, in this exchange of ideas. But none of that is enough. A couple of years ago, I wrote a book about the experience in Peru, and I entitled it "We Are Late," and I chose that title in order to reflect the need that we have to be obsessed with a tremendous sense of urgency when it comes to making speedier headway in order to transform our educational systems. We need to be obsessed by that sense of urgency, because whilst we speak today, there is a young person in university, a school child, that is not who is not necessarily receiving the quality service that he or she may deserve or require, and that is happening right now. So sometimes we say, well, processes take time. We have to adequately design policies, and yes, that is true, but that is not a satisfactory response for a parent that who is sending his or her child to school at present. And therefore, in that sense, the speed at which we must make progress is far greater than the speed that we have been working on lately. We have seen the latest results of PISA, where in the region, 75% of 15-year-olds do not have the mathematical reasoning that they require. 45% of children don't have the level of reading comprehension that they deserve. And those figures are horrendous. They are extremely negative, and it is true our educational systems have improved. All our educational systems in the region as a whole are better than they were 20 years ago. There have been improvements. Yes, that's true, but the level at which we find ourselves today is dramatically far lower than what we require. And we need to be aware of the level of the magnitude of that challenge. We've, all of us who are in this room, have a tremendous task ahead of us in terms of bringing to the fore that development challenge, because we're in a context where the world is experiencing other development challenges that are equally challenging: climate change, fiscal crises, food insecurity, migration problems, the security problems that we see in many of our countries, the major challenges posed by digitalization and artificial intelligence. All that occupies the minds of societies and of those that are public policy makers. And within that context, becomes very difficult to say, well, education is also important. Within that context, it is not easy to say, yes, we must be truly concerned with climate change, but we must also uh, be preoccupied with the human capital of our people. And therefore, that is a scope that involves many, many needs. It is a scope that is very busy, and therefore it's crucial for us to bring to the fore that challenge to develop human capital. Sometimes we say or we ask ourselves, oh, well, do we know how to go about doing this or not? And in one way or another, I believe that that policy design is something that we know fairly well. We know how schools work well, but the major challenge is to ensure that not only one school operates well, but that the 50,000 schools that exist in a country work well. That is the major challenge that we face, and therefore we know about policy design, but that is a design that must include an additional element, which is the implementation of that design, and that is a major challenge in our countries. We must make sure that ministries of education and also at a local government level, there are bureaucracies that need to have enormous capabilities in order to implement policies, and that is a major challenge. We're not only talking about design, but rather the capability to implement those designs. And thirdly, we need financing. Yes, of course, we also need financing. That is also a great challenge, but none of that is enough. We can have design and we can have the resources that are available. We may have the implementation capabilities within our bureaucracies, but we also need political commitment, and political commitment, and not only on the part of those sitting here who are convinced about the importance of education, but the political commitment of societies as a whole. Minister Cataldo, I have also played a similar role. We all know that it is not enough for the for the Minister of Education to be convinced. We need the President to be convinced and the full cabinet to be convinced. We need parliaments to be fully convinced. We need entrepreneurs to be convinced, and likewise civil society. It is not enough for the educational world to be convinced of the need to make progress. We need a political commitment on the part of Latin American and Caribbean societies and societies throughout the world. So we need four elements: the design, the capability to do things. We need the money, the financing, and we also need the political commitment. And sometimes we are failing there, and we must make headway simultaneously along those four elements. And the time has come, as was just said, the time has come, this was mentioned by the minister, to move from commitments to actions. And the interest that exists, the desire that exists in rooms such as this, and the elements and capabilities of the people in this room should lead us to ensure that all countries indeed enjoy that political commitment, and that we can enter into the commitment of providing the education they deserve to all our boys and girls. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Saavedra. Now we offer the floor to the regional deputy director of our partner organization, UNICEF, and Claire Dufay. Excellencies, ministers, dear allies, teenagers, and young people that visit us from different countries, colleagues all. I would like to begin by expressing my gratitude to our hosts, the Ministry of Education of Chile, UNESCO, ECLAC, the World Bank, the Latin American Development Bank. It is an honor for UNICEF to co-organize this very important event together with all of you. Whilst we meet today, many boys and girls in Latin America and the Caribbean are in a classroom. Some of them have just begun school, and others are spending their summer in recovery classes. But we're all aware that a few years ago, in the midst of the pandemic, most were not attending school. I would like to share with you the history of Maria, a 14-year-old girl from Ecuador. When the pandemic hit us, Maria began to work in a place, in a car washing place, and for 2 years she could not attend school. It wasn't until she enrolled in a program to accelerate learning when she was able to improve her abilities, enabling her to pass her secondary school entry exam. In Latin America and the Caribbean, 4 out of every 5 boys and girls aged 10 are unable to read a simple text. Millions of them, such as Maria, lost years of learning, and they urgently require to catch up. And that not only what is at risk is not only their right to education. We're talking about a generation of students that will no longer have the basic capabilities in order to build a future for themselves, their families, and their communities. The loss of learnings and the school dropout rate will damage the region in the next decades, deepening inequalities and putting at risk and putting economic growth at risk. We all know that we must deal with the learning crisis. 11 countries from Latin America and the Caribbean, more countries than in any other region of the world, have come together or have joined the commitment on actions of basic learnings, a global initiative to again focus on the achievement of SDG 4. As from UNICEF, we hope to have more countries joining this commitment and that this be transformed into actions. If Latin America and the Caribbean are able to reduce the poverty of learning by half, and UNICEF estimates that at least 2.3 million boys and girls, additional boys and girls, will be able to read in our region by 2030. And for this to become a reality, governments must strengthen financing of education, especially for basic learning. The first decade of childhood represents a window of opportunity in order to shape the development trajectory of boys and girls and to establish the solid foundations for lifelong learning. To guarantee reading and writing, the knowledge of mathematics, and skills for life by the age of 10 for all children is an absolute priority. No boy or girl can be left behind, and this includes boys and girls from indigenous communities, Afro descendants, those with disabilities, those living in rural areas, and those that are migrating. In UNICEF, we are working with governments and allies throughout the region in order to find solutions. And these include recovery programs, such as the one that helped Maria, digital innovations, and inclusive educational materials. So these interventions will not only recover lost learnings, but also transform education in order to adapt it to the needs of students. It will no longer be enough to move to work on the basic aspects. In the summit on education held in New York 2 years ago, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres asked leaders to transform educational systems as an urgent political imperative for our collective future. And we are aware that that same message is also supported by young people present in this meeting and that have joined their efforts in order to bring to this space a diversity of voices and realities from throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Via a consultation process, they have identified 7 priorities that they believe are fundamental as students in order to transform education. As mentioned in their open letter, to listen to their perspectives must be the standard. And in Santiago, we're interested in evidencing fruitful exchanges during the next 2 days, and likewise collaboration in order to and transformative solutions for this region. A new type of education is possible in Latin America and the Caribbean, and education that prepares us for the future and that may be adequate for all children. Thank you very much.
Muchísimas gracias. ¿Verdad?
Thank you very much. And with regard to youth, it really is the moment now to receive some words from the representative of youth in Latin America and the Caribbean. We give the warmest welcome then to Felipe Gomez Gallo. Please. Deemed ministers, high-level officials, and particularly young people and students that are with us here in the ministerial meeting with us. It's an honor to address you as the representative of Latin America and the Caribbean in the UNESCO network of youngsters and students of SDG 4, Quality Education. My name is Felipe Gomez Gallo. I'm from Colombia, and I would like to start this talk with thank you for the major effort made by UNESCO, UNICEF, and those organizations defending youth have invested to make this, to guarantee the ministerial meeting and their presence. This is a major step in order to secure the participation and also significant bearing of the education. And we hope to continue this collaboration road to recover learning, to recover financing and commit education. On yesterday, it was the International Day of Education and the role to present hate discourses to reach commitments for peace. It's not a secret that a society, we live in a world that confronts many crises. Today, my country is really in fire because of the El Nino impact. And each year we see new historical high-level temperatures and the challenges that these confront. And this is why in the year 2024, we cannot continue to celebrate the negation. We need to go beyond political ideologies and also give priority to the well-being in common and also making decisions based on science. And this is where we have the true power of education as a precursor of sustainable development. It is our moral duty before this and the future generations that we commit with education to confront the regional and global challenges. In order to finalize, I would like to invite you to be ready and willing to listen to diversity of youths present here in this ministerial meeting. Let's learn, let's build together, and let's focus on the solutions. To this space, we reach an open letter for an education that will be transforming, aimed at you, a letter that's collective, that has been mentioned. It reflects the 7 priorities that as youth and students, we would think that are essential that we need to tackle right now. Finally, as youngsters, we demand and we request, I also invite you to be critical on the mechanisms for participation of youngsters, requesting clear frameworks of transparency, giving accounts, accountability, and also working on the heroisms that gather all the spaces that are available. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We would also like to thank the fact that you could be limited in time, but we were somewhat delayed. Thank you very much for your words. We're now open space for Ms. Claudia Rio, the Director of Office of the Regional UNESCO in Santiago. Director, please. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. I take also the headings for all of those that have been speaking before me, extending also the warmest welcome also on behalf of UNESCO to each and every one of you, and especially thanking those that traveled many hours, long hours to these very far away places in Latin America, able to be here present during this meeting, showing their interest and commitment for this work on education. The fact that close to 30 delegations of all of Latin America and the Caribbean are here today this is the biggest gathering that we've had in ministerial meetings in the past years. And the fact that many of these delegations are already headed by the highest authorities of the areas really shows the value that each one of us here present give to being here together, to be able to cooperate, to share, and to together seek solutions to the problems and challenges that our region is confronting. And that in a very eloquent manner have already been presented by those who have spoken before me. I extend also, of course, my thankfulness to the government of Chile, to the Minister of Education, Nicolás Cataldo, and ECLAC, the Executive Director, José Manuel Salazar, for allowing us to really hold the meeting in this tremendous space, which also has so significant for this educational regional dialogue that's so important, both because we are gathering here in Chile, which has taken up this leadership, global leadership already in terms of education, as well as for being here in CLAC, an organization that has taken a role, fundamental role also in the debate of education and development in Latin America and the Caribbean. Perhaps all of you are maybe very young, too young, but some of the meetings that have been landmarks here for our history, educational history in the region, have really taken place also here in ECLAC. And I will refer then to a meeting, historical meeting that took place that we held, that was held. I was already very young in those days, but in 1962, in which a declaration was subscribed, historical declaration was subscribed, the one of Santiago, where the Latin American countries gathered and defined very many of the decisions that are still ruling us today. For example, that meeting of ministers, the decision was made that educational investment should not be less than 4% of GDP and that it would be increasing gradually through time. This is a decision that was really held in a framework during this declaration that took place in the framework of that meeting those days. For example, the decision also that the school timetable would be 200 days a year, for example. The decision was made that the primary education should last 6 years and secondary go down to 3, and higher education diversify another 3 years. So you may see that all these are decisions that were made within the meetings such as these, and that truly have really marked our destiny and our structure as a region. So our Latin American region does have a very long history of cooperation, which is the point I would like to underline here during my words, the importance of that cooperation between our countries, because very many achievements have come about from this and learning process in terms of what we can reach when we work together. Some skepticals were telling me, and there are quite a few of them, that these meetings, why do you continue to organize these meetings? What are they for? These meetings, really, we have all these declarations that are just words that really lead to nothing. How are we going to continue to invest our time, our money? So I would like to ask those skepticals, deniers, a little bit referring to what we have attained throughout our history and through these mechanisms of cooperation. And for this, we have made an effort, a truly titanic effort of being able to bring to you today a summary, which is called the collaboration Latin America and the Caribbean, 8 decades of joint collaboration of the states and alongside UNESCO. They should say also many other international organizations as well, I should say. But from mid last century and motivated by the terrible challenge that the Second World War really applied, the countries in the region entrusted in ambitious educational projects for the entire region, really marking different goals and developing capacities among the technicals and the teachers in the region, starting with the very strong thrust around educational planning, which also had an expression here in Iclac in those days with the creation of the ILPES, and later on with the creation of the IPE on the side of UNESCO, which prepared an entire generation of educational planners with the reflection in their planning offices, educational planning in practically all the countries that are present here today, with really charts that were made up thanks to their cooperation efforts, regional efforts that really had scholarships and financial support from many of the organizations also present here today. So it's very important to see the role that was played by the IDB in those days as well, when they were the ones that were executing the funds for the Alliance of Progress that would allow the different educational systems in Latin America to be able to come along with these major projects that are transformed, that are reinforced education in our region. In the educational debate, I'm seeing that my time is up, but anyway, I will just finish my last words. So today, 62 years later in the historical region, we once again find ourselves very many same players that were gathered in 1962 by UNESCO and ECLAC. And we see that we have the expectation that just like we were able to in the past be able to achieve, might be also be able to attain, achieve that we're able to have that kind of results during meetings such as this one that will lead us to all those commitments, from the commitments to the action. So the invitation is to truly to reinforce our cooperation mechanisms, to truly be able to jointly think about not only what we do each day at a national level with national focus, but rather also be able to think how we can really brainstorm and gather our efforts and experience to work for Latin America that is more just, with greater progress, more fair. And this is the invitation that I make today. And thank you very much. And I hope that we have a great meeting. Thank you. Thank you very much, Director. Well, it is a time for pause now. So we are very many here during this hall. So the invitation is for the majority of you to be able to go outside here, right here, have our coffee. And the special invitations for the authorities and ministers and the co-organizers to please place yourselves alongside those flags in the back for the official picture. But all the people, we can all go out now to give them space and be able to enjoy some coffee, because I think we'll see you in some 20 minutes.